Good day, everyone. So, Mavuika and Kokomi, an unlikely duo if we're really honest, but one that can be surprisingly fun, and that's what today's video is all about. So, how do you play them together? Well, you're going to use the Sukokomon team with Mavuika kicking out Xiangling. So, what does this team consist of? It's official Kokomi, Mavuika, and Sucrose. So it should be a team that is accessible, especially if you're a long-time player. And as you've noted there with my official, I tried to get her a decent or like a balanced like set in terms of her E or an attack, and it's the same year of Kokomi. We're purely playing a supportive role, so the constellations on Kokomi really do not matter whatsoever, and it's all just about trying to get the elemental reactions on the field and occasionally hitting a big vaporized hit there on Mavuika, and the attack with Thrilling Tales here is going to enable it, obviously with the artifacts that Kokomi has as well. So this is purely Kokomi in a supportive role. And then we've got Mavuika, as you can see in the background. I've gone for the Obsidian Codex route here of my Mavuika. She's at C0R1. So this is something that I can imagine you would be able to get. And there you go. We're not doing so good on the talents yet because, well, we haven't had the boss out for a long time. And then here is Fischl. For this particular showcase, I thought that perhaps trying to put in a bit more energy recharge so that I can get Sucrose's burst a lot up more frequently is going to be the better ploy than just to go EM all the way. And it certainly helped because then we can get some of those big vaporize hits in. Okay, so let's do a bit of a round through the Spiral Abyss. The A team will just clear quickly here on the first halves and give us a bit of breathing room to talk about things. So yeah, the entire point of the Sukokomon team is that you want to drive elemental reactions. Now the classic team involving Xiangling and so on had two distinct phases of damage. The first would be the setup phase, where you, for instance, you put down Oz, you put down Jellyfish, you'd put on Guoba, and then you would try and get the Guoba swirls, which did a lot of the damage. And then the next phase was using, for instance, Xiangling's elemental burst, and then having Kokomi on field to supply enough Hydro to vaporize. So that would be generally the bulk of the damage that you could do in that team, and then a lot of consistency of elemental applications as you then reset your rotation. But with this team, things are a bit more flexible. You don't have to play so strictly in order. It's all about just how well you can manage those setups. You can see here we got the little Hydro Infusion, and then you can play around with Mavuika and Kokomi and just trying to get the best of both teams. So typically with the original Sukokomon team involving Xiangling, you'd play around your Fischl's cooldowns, but because you've got Kokomi here, you would instead now play around Kokomi's cooldown. So instead of a 24-second cycle, it's a lot easier to go for a 20-second cycle within this team, which is one I absolutely enjoy. So yeah, that is the idea, and it's a pretty fun team. I think the big benefit is that you don't have that elemental burst, which is the big thing that kept these original Sukokomon like quite down. You didn't have Bennett to augment Xiangling's very low attack, so you had to build it with ER and EM mostly in mind, but because Mavuika doesn't need ER, and you've got Sucrose doing a lot of normal attacks, Kokomi doing normal attacks, and if you really have nothing else to do, using Fischl with normal attacks, it's not that difficult to get Mavuika's fighting spirit up and then beat the boss very easily. So that was a round one look at this team. It is certainly a lot of fun. There's a lot of skill expression that you can do, and it's just about ensuring that you manage your buffs and how you swirl against the enemy. Originally the problem with Sukokomon was that it was very good in like AoE situations where you could like group all the enemies together because the multi-hits really started stacking up. But against single targets, it kind of fell off, and the biggest weakness was if you didn't have Xiangling's burst or if the enemy moved outside of Guoba's range, you really lost a lot of damage and it was very inflexible. But here it's a lot more flexible, and you can see against the Tenebris Papilla, because we're constantly swirling and each swirl like counts as like a couple of multi-hits, it's just easy to break it. And as you can see, you get the setup, you do the big vaporize here with Mavuika, and I think in some occasion if you actually swirl Electro, there is a certain setup where you can do 370k damage, which is even more than the vaporize, but I mean, that's very rare to get that. But yeah, other than that, you can see here the team is very flexible. We're just going to play around the enemy's movements, ensuring that we often get the correct auras on them. Sometimes you can see here I mess it up up, I infuse the wrong element. That's all a part of just this team and the skill expression that it involves. It's a team that's not just about ability management, but about being able to move well, which is what I love about Genshin Impact. And as you can see here, I get my Sucrose's Elemental Burst right up, we infuse with Hydro, we get the Vaporize, and that is exactly what we wanted. Whether it's a crit or not doesn't matter, and you can see here, because of the portable Pyro application, it's a lot easier for you to now focus on managing the enemies around your Kokomi jellyfish. Remember, ours is like portable, and then that gives you a good way to just take care of the enemies. It's pretty simple to beat this enemy. I think this should be accessible to players that are long-time players, and especially F2P players that don't have other Natlan characters. And that's also what I wanted to show to you today. You don't need Shallonen, you don't need Citlali to get the most out of Mavuika. Yes, you're not gonna, you're gonna get the most damage out of Mavuika, but in terms of getting a usable Mavuika that you can take into this abyss, that's just what I wanted to present to you. And I think there's enough time on the clock, especially if I reference my other account, that you'll still be able to do the first half of a normal F2P or like a very well invested team. So that's the entire point. And then we've got here the little mechanical dinosaur. He is pretty easy. In the beginning, you can use a lot of official normal attacks to build a fighting spirit. Then there's a setup. I should probably put the jellyfish a bit backwards in case this thing stands up and wants to like move forward. But these are all little subtleties, and there you go. You can slash with Mavuika. The one downside of this team is that you'll never really build like a lot of fighting spirit for Mavuika, so you'll never get that full elemental burst. I do believe at C1 this shouldn't be a problem, and you'll get even more attack on Mavuika, which is really awesome. In fact, you could then perhaps then with C1 make an argument to put on an EM Sans on Mavuika. Not sure, haven't done the maths, this is just pure speculation, but because of all the attack bonuses with Kokomi and then Mavuika C1, that could be a valid option. In any case, for those of us that are sticking it out at C0, you can see it is pretty comfy to beat this enemy. It's not that difficult. There is still more than enough time on the clock, so that if you struggled against Wolf Lord, which you can also use Kachina for, I've shown this in a previous video, you'll have enough time left. You can see here there's like a minute 28 on the clock, so on the first half you can make that up. Pretty simple. Yeah, so that's how you use Kokomi and Mavuika, but you might say, well, can we perhaps not just do a little melt showcase, because everyone's doing the melt showcase? And the answer is yes. You'll need to start here with Mavuika and be careful that her elemental skill is not going to activate at the point where you freeze these enemies, because you want to try and time the melt. So this is the big problem with the team here in the background. You only get the Cinder City buff from Kachina if you actually trigger a pyro related reaction with Kachina's little swirly, but because you do that, the off-field pyro application can actually mess a bit, or it can mess the setup. If you do it properly, and it's really difficult to manage, you can expect about a 550k burst here, assuming you get cryo onto the Primo Geovisha. Other than that, just then the standard 320 you can see here that I've got with Kokomi and so on will do it. Sometimes this can be very finicky, sometimes the owner's little buff doesn't work. It's very tricky. It's not a team that I would recommend for seriously clearing in the abyss, but if you just want to have some fun in the overworld and you don't have Shilon, you don't have Citlali, and you just want to do like the budget melt with Mavuika, this is what you can do. So it's just to show you there are options here, despite the fact that we've got Kachina here, and even if you replace Kachina with Shilon, you're going to still struggle with this type of team against the Papilia, because you won't be able to break your shield fast enough. You don't have that constant like elemental application, which is really what drives it. But in any case, you can still have some fun if you just want a team to help beat the first half, or like the first chamber, and there you go. And then finally, if you want to have a bit more of a premium team, you can swap out your Sucrose for a Chaska and then just play Chaska on field. Once again, you're going to lose out on damage because you're not buffing Chaska's attack with someone like Bennett, but it certainly just gives you a bit more flexibility in terms of beating up the enemies. Certainly beating the Papilia is super quick with this team, and you get max fighting spirit, although you'll only occasionally use it with Mavuika. This is much more of a Chaska team, but not a very optimal one. Alright, so that's what I've had to show for you guys today. It's just a bit of like ideas to use Kokomi and Mavuika together. You don't need a C6 Kokomi. A C0 Kokomi should be more than good enough, but you're going to need good artifacts on your Fischl and your Mavuika if you want to play these Sukokomon variants, and perhaps with a bit of retrying a couple of times, just so you can see how the enemy patterns work and get a feel for when should I infuse and when I shouldn't. Certainly in the background footage for today's video, I've made a lot of positioning mistakes, stamina mistakes, and so on. So there is a skill ceiling, but that's to me what makes Genshin so much fun. Teams like these where it's not just the characters doing a lot of the damage, but your active input that makes the difference between either getting it or like just turbo clearing it, which is what I love. Alright, thank you guys so much for watching and have a great day.